Thank you. I'm pretty sure I won't need 10 minutes, but hopefully this will give an introduction to the PSMP from the donor-partner perspective. I think Atibahanu talked very briefly about the overview of the program, and I think John will shortly talk a bit more about some of the very, very powerful statistics behind the impact evaluation that we have on the PSMP. But just as a very, very brief highlight, the PSMP has, over the last 10 years, halved food insecurity for those enrolled in the program. There has been significant asset protection. 90% of the assets have been protected for people enrolled in a household as compared with non-PSMP households. There's also been an increase in asset accumulation for households enrolled in the PSMP. As Atibahanu said, there is a significant public works component to the program. So in exchange for cash and food for 6 months of the year, people are expected to engage in public works. And the public works are primarily focused on the natural resource base, so rejuvenating the natural resource base. Again, I'm guessing that John probably won't touch on this too much because his evaluation is driven at the household level. But when we look at some of the impacts from the public works on the natural resource base, again, there are some very, very powerful figures. We talk about carbon sequestration of 5 million tons per hectare, for example. Issues like that make the program incredibly, incredibly powerful and speak to a wide range of audiences, both from a food security perspective, from a nutrition perspective, from a climate resilience green economy perspective. So there are a number of different ways that the program interacts with different agendas, both global and national. And again, as I said, I think John will probably talk to that in a bit more depth. I think I was specifically asked to talk to some of the achievements and the challenges and the lessons from the donor side. And I think one of the major achievements of the program has really been when we compare life before the PSMP with life now. From the donor side, prior to 2005, prior to the PSMP coming into existence, we had hundreds, literally hundreds of very, very small food security related projects, and they were scattered across the country. There was up to sort of 250. And what did that mean? It meant that there was a massive, massive requirement on government in terms of reporting, in terms of overall oversight, a significant transaction costs for development partners in terms of oversight and management of those projects. And of course, inevitably, there was duplication. So there was an overlap of how these programs, how these projects work together, and of course that creates all sorts of burdens and all sorts of problems for all of the stakeholders involved, not least, of course, the households. So from the donor side, probably one of the most major achievements in the PSMP is actually working together as one unified body, as one harmonized set of donors, providing the government with a one-stop shop in terms of how they can interact with 10, 12 donors at any one time, and essentially avoiding this fragmentation that had occurred prior to 2005. How did this happen? It was really driven by two things. Domestically, there was an initiative driven by the previous Prime Minister, Atam El-Zenawi. He drove forward an agenda under the new Food Security Coalition. And this was a reflection on the inefficiencies of the model prior to 2005. He recognized that there were significant overlaps, underperformance by a lot of projects, and massive inefficiencies in terms of costs. So leading that initiative, he essentially sort of called all of the donors together under around one table and said, look, we all need to get our act together, and we can achieve more by working together in a genuine partnership. Internationally, there was the aid effectiveness agenda driven at Paris by Tony Blair and others. And so these two things kind of together came as a sort of perfect storm about how in country everyone was expected to have one common vision and work towards one common goal. So that encouragement, both domestically and internationally, very much led to what we call the Donor Working Group, which is the group of donors that support the government in delivering this program. So the program, in terms of harmonization, has one log frame, it has one monitoring and evaluation framework, it has one system of accountability, one reporting and planning cycle, and underneath all that, supporting all of that, is one group of donors. And my job is to harmonize those donors, which is a significant task, as you can imagine. The benefit of this, of course, is significant because transaction costs are significantly reduced, not just for donors, but for the government. So Atabahano and I spend an awful lot of time together, and Atabahano is probably sick of the sight of me. But the reason we do that is to make sure that there is a genuine partnership and that there is a genuine, clear way of moving forward so that we have a significant level of trust between us and that we can actually resolve problems as and when they arise. The other major benefit is that we can harmonize resources to the program. So some significant achievements. Challenges. Where do I start with this, Atabahano? Yeah, I mean, of course, one of the major concerns from development partners is that we return to the dark days. We return to the days prior to the PSMP, and we have fragmentation. Massive, the implications of that are significant in terms of transaction costs for government and donors, in terms of inefficiencies of resources. And I think that we're in a good space now. But of course, there is always that international agency pressure to stick your flag on something and say, this is my project. And I think at all costs, we should be working together to avoid that. Again, from the development partner side, one of the major challenges at the moment is that the size of the needs in country far exceed the capacity and the resources available to respond, to meet everyone's needs. So if we look at the cold hard facts on the ground, we have 27 million people who live under the food poverty line. The program currently reaches up to 8.2 million. So you don't need to be a rocket scientist to work out the maths. The program is reaching 25-30% of the caseload that is in need of support. So that, of course, remains a challenge for both the government and for development partners. Now, having said all that, the future is bright. We, as Atabahano indicated, we have a new program which is currently under construction. We spent a long time preparing some analysis, doing an awful lot of in-depth analytics in terms of how we can do business better, how do we get a bigger bang for our buck. So the comprehensive review resulted in identifying areas where we need to improve from a technical perspective as well as an implementation perspective, our business. And one of the key areas where we have identified is that we need to improve our work on nutrition outcomes. So there is clearly an interface between food security, between long-term sustainable livelihoods and nutrition being a cornerstone of how we are going to be measuring some of our success over the next 5 years. Lessons. By working together in partnership, we can actually achieve more than we can individually. I know it sounds very simple, but actually sometimes the simple things are actually the most important. And it's very, very easy to default into an institutional perspective. And I think that by doing so, we lose sight of the bigger picture. And we can achieve much, much more by working together than we can individually. And I'm going to finish in the next 30 seconds. But, I mean, this conference is about resilience. This program is resilience in action. I'm hoping, I'm fairly confident, John is going to give you some fairly powerful stats on what the program has managed to achieve over the last 10 years. And it's significant. And we talk about resilience, and we talk about how do we measure it. We talk about what does it mean. We talk about how do we define it and how do we work together. But this program is delivering resilience on the ground, pretty much as defined by any of the development partners' existing definitions. Of course, there's room for improvement, But the fact is we need to continue to work together to achieve this, and to build on and deepen the work that the program has made to date. Hopefully the new design reflects the ambition in terms of the scale and scope and the coverage. We are, of course, not going to be reaching 27 million. That would be impossible, but there is a significant increase in the numbers of people that we are expecting to reach in the next generation of the program. Of course, that means that there are resource implications, and the donors, as well as both pure development donors as well as humanitarian donors, as well as the government, as well as other players, perhaps in terms of climate change, climate funding partners, we need to be able to work together to be able to deliver a greater good for the households on the ground. And that puts the onus of responsibility on us to break down some of these very, very artificial funding silos of humanitarian resources and development resources in order to be able to continue to deliver resilience on the ground. Thank you.